There you go. So thanks everybody for joining the session. WCAG compliance in Power BI, making data accessible to all. Before I get started, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Juliana Smith, and my background is actually in physical oceanography. So I started my career in data science and ocean research. And I currently work with project controls analytics. And since 2020, I have specialized in Power BI and user interface design. I have a blog called Smart Frames UI and a YouTube channel called Accessible BI, where I share content on Power BI as well as accessible design. So today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about disabilities, and then we're going to have an introduction to digital accessibility. We're going to have a look through some of the common accessibility issues in data visualizations. And then we're going to talk about the WCAG, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and how to integrate these guidelines to report design, making content perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So let's get started. And I like to start this session with a personal story. So this is me a few years ago after I had my first two surgeries. I had one in each hand. Where after those surgeries, I ended up with nerve damage in both of my hands. And then I had a career break because at the time I was a navigator and I was not fit for work anymore. And when I got back to work, after I decided that's when I moved to work with corporate data and Power BI. I was given this mouse here, which is a simple mouse, nothing fancy. And for 2 years, I used this mouse and I really, really struggled because having nerve damage meant that I lost dexterity, so ability to do fine movements with my hands. I also lost mobility and strength. And I was absolutely terrified because I couldn't do fine adjustments on my dashboard. I thought that if my managers knew about it, I would be fired because it was supposed to be part of my job and I could not do it. But then after 2 years really struggling with this mouse, I had to speak to my line manager and say, I'm really struggling. I'm so sorry. And that's when I was told, no, you don't have to apologize. We have to give you the means to do your work in the best way. So I was introduced to this mouse. That is the mouse that I've been using since. So which means I just have to use my thumb. I don't need to move my wrist or my hands to use it. And I can spend the entire day trying to explain how I felt about this minor design change in my mouse, how it has changed my relationship with work. But I think you would kind of understand, but not how I feel it. And the reason I like to say that is because everything that I talk about digital accessibility and accessibility changes in data visualizations, it is from a perspective from someone who does not rely on accessibility features. So it is therefore, it can be seen as a limited understanding about it. So a pinch of salt on everything I'm going to talk about what are the accessibility challenges and the importance. So let's get started talking about, let's understand a bit. Let's see what the stats. There are over 1 billion people globally living with some form of disability, and that accounts for about 16% of the world population. And disabilities come in various forms. They can be permanent, temporarily, or situational. So a permanent disability is a long-term or lifelong condition that doesn't go away. So, for example, when I have nerve damage, it's going to be for the rest. It's chronic. It's not going to go away. There is also temporary disabilities, which are short-term conditions that a person recovers from. And finally, we have situational disability, which happens because of a specific situation or environment, and it's not a medical condition. So I have here an example of permanent, temporary, and situational. So the one on the left, permanent disability would be, for example, someone who only has one arm. It is something that's going to be for the rest of that person's life. A temporary could be an arm injury. So you're going to have your arm, I don't know, you cannot use your arm, it's on a sling, and that you're going to recover from that within time. And a situational disability can be seen here as a parent holding a baby. So while the parent is holding the baby, they cannot use one of their hands because it's holding a baby. But that's not a medical condition. It's just the situation of holding a baby. So that will, it's just because of situation or the environment. Now, there are also different types of disabilities. So there are cognitive disabilities, and these refers to conditions that affect mental processes, such as memory or attention. They're often invisible disabilities. We also have visual disabilities, which includes blindness, low vision, and color blindness, for example. We have auditory disabilities that covers hearing loss and deafness. We have motor disability, which involves physical impairments that affect movement, coordination, or dexterity, which is what I have. So my nerve damage is classed within motor disability. And we also have speech disability. Let's now have an introduction to digital accessibility. So digital accessibility aims to make websites, apps, and other digital experiences usable for everyone. And that means that everyone should be able to perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with digital interfaces without, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, and circumstances. And by making digital products accessible, we not only ensure accessible to all, so individuals with disabilities would also be able to access important information and services, but we also promote inclusivity and give equal opportunities for everyone in society. By complying with digital accessibility also means we are complying with legal requirements. So there are laws and regulations around the world regarding digital accessibility. So by complying with it, we reduce the risk of lawsuits. And of course, when we design with accessibility in mind, we also provide an enhanced user experience for everyone because interface will naturally become more intuitive and easier to navigate. So as I mentioned, there are various laws and regulations worldwide. So I'm just going to list a few examples. So the United States has European Union, which there was a significant change in June last year, where now all the websites and services, they have to comply with accessibility guidelines. In the United Kingdom, we also have, so I'm based. Australia has, and Brazil has one as well. So there are others. I just wanted to illustrate the different places that has some kind of regulation or law about the use of accessibility. So now let's understand some of the accessibility challenges in data visualizations. And for that, I'm going to use this example that has many, many issues. So I'm not here judging if the data is correct. I'm just judging how these was designed. And we have here the primary culprits of poor accessibility, which is a cluttered interface. So when our reports and dashboards have too many charts, too much text, icons, and elements, it can become quite overwhelming for our users to process information. So it will increase your cognitive load, which is the mental effort required to understand, process and understand information. So it also can make it difficult for screen readers to navigate properly and convey information accurately, what is on that report page. And then we also have inconsistent layout, so that when the layouts that we have across different pages or even across different reports in the same organization, when that is inconsistent, our users will also have to spend extra time and effort to understand the structure and to locate the information they need. So it will also increase cognitive load. We also have poor alignment. So poor alignment of all the elements in our reports can lead to a disjointed and confusing user experience. So when misaligned visuals or text or any other elements on your page can create visual clutter and make it difficult for users to follow the flow of information. Next, we have poor color contrast. So color contrast is critical in ensuring that all users can read and understand the content on the interface. It could be a dashboard, a report, or even a PowerPoint that you create. So when the contrast between the elements on the foreground, which will be text, icons, or the data visualizations, when that contrast against the background is not sufficient, it can become quite challenging for users who may have visual impairments, or even those that monitor the screens, they don't have a good resolution, or the settings, I don't know, maybe it's too bright, or the lighting in the environment, if it's not suitable, they will also struggle to distinguish and interpret information. And when you have poor color contrast, it can also strain the eyes of all users, and that will lead to fatigue and reduce attention. Next is unreadable text size. So text size is very important in the readability of your interface, of your report and dashboard. And when the text is too small, users with visual impairments or those users who are trying to view the report in a smaller screen, I don't know, it's getting more and more frequent, consuming information on the go. So maybe you have a tablet or a smartphone. It will be really difficult for those users to read what is on their interface if the font size is too small. And then unreadable text size can also lead to frustration and hinder the user's ability to interact with the dashboard in an efficient way. So I think about sometimes I'm trying to read content on my phone, and sometimes it's very small and I try to zoom in as much as I can, and at some point I just give up. So that can cause this, when you have a report that is the font size is too small, it can have similar frustration. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of challenges that it's very difficult to understand unless you rely on one of them. And the first one is incorrect tab order. So tab order is the order that you navigate the elements on your dashboard by using the tab key. So not all users will use a mouse. And then when the order does not match the intended order that the user is supposed to consume the report, that will create a lot of confusion and frustration, especially for users who also rely on screen readers. So this is how would be like navigating a report with the incorrect tab order. So you click tab and it's going to show you a random visual, and then you're going to be going around. And then if you're trying to interact with the slides, so you're going to be tabbing for a long, long time. Now, if you can see the screen, it's going to be very frustrating. You're just going to be hitting tab angrily. But if you cannot see the screen, if you, for example, rely on the screen readers, you may lose important information. That, speaking about screen readers, that is the other challenge. So when there is no alternative text. So alternative text is essential for making visual content accessible for users who relies on screen readers. And if you don't add alternative text explaining what is the function, the purpose, or what is that, even that visualization, it means that the screen readers will not be able to convey the information to users with visual impairment. And of course, that will cause a significant loss of context and understanding. So now that we spoke about all these challenges and we understand some of the type of disabilities, let's look at how we can ensure that our our digital content is more accessible. So there are a few things I'm going to talk here that I don't just use in Power BI. So whenever I'm creating a PowerPoint or something like that, I ensure that I check some of these elements. So let's talk about WCAG, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. WCAG are globally recognized standards, and they were designed to make digital content accessible to people with disabilities. And it was developed by the World Wide Web Consortium. So WCAG 2.2 is the most current version. It has been used since October 2023. And there is already a draft for WCAG 3.0, which is available on their website, although it's not clear when that will become the official version. And for the current version, there are in total 13 guidelines across 4 principles, which are known as POUR. I'm going to talk about them. And there are in total 87 success criteria. Now, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to talk about all these success criteria because they're not all applicable to Power BI. These success criteria, they were created initially. So WCAG was created initially for website development and software development. So not all of them are applicable to Power BI. Now, let's have a look, which are these 4 principles that I mentioned. So first we have P for perceivable. And that means that the users can recognize and use services and tools through one or more of their senses. So if you, for example, cannot hear, making your video perceivable will mean adding captions. So those users who cannot hear, they can still read what is happening and they understand the content of the video. We have O for operable, and these mean that the user interface components and navigation must be operable using various input methods, including keyboard. We have U for understandable, and that means that the interface should be easy to read, predictable in behavior, and designed to help users to avoid and recover from errors. And finally, we have R for robust, but the content must be robust enough to be interpreted in a reliable way by assistive technologies, and that includes screen readers. WCAG also outlines 3 different levels of compliance. So we have level A, level AA, and level AAA. And these levels represent different degrees of accessibility that digital content should meet. So first we have level A, which addresses the most basic accessibility features. It's suitable for some, but not all users. We have level AA, which addresses the most common barriers for users, aiming to make content accessible to a wide range of people. And we have level AAA, that addresses the highest level of accessibility, providing the most inclusive experience for all users, including those with significant disabilities. Level AA is the most commonly mandated standard for legal compliance. So if you remember all the regulations I showed in a previous slide, they all require you to comply with at least level AA, with exception of the Brazilian regulation that they do not actually specify which level of compliance. And the reason the level AA is the most commonly mandated is because it covers a wide range of disabilities, while it's also practical to implement, to follow, to comply with these criteria when you're developing your interfaces. Now let's go to, okay, we understand what WCAG is, we understand the 4 principles. Let's look into how we can make our content perceivable. So I'm going to start with this example of a chaotic design. If I ask you to read the main message from this screen, you're going to think that, oh, what do you have in your mind, Juliana? That doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't. I would never ask you to read the message on this image. And we also have to think, well, if you don't want to read from that chaotic, use of letters, why would we give something like this to our user, which is also chaotic? It doesn't have an order. You don't know what is the most important. You don't even know where to start looking at. And then there is something that we call in user interface design white space, and white space will help a lot in helping us to create an interface that is less chaotic. So white space refers to the empty areas between elements, and that helps to prevent our interfaces from feeling overwhelming. So a white space is like breathing room. So if I show you here, the arrows, they represent the white space, so the empty space between elements. And then if you compare the image on the right with on the left, you may have noted that there are less elements on the image on the right. And that's the first we have to consider, right? It's not because we can fit 20 different visuals on our screen that we should actually them all. We have to learn how to prioritize and make space in our report. So white space is not directly mentioned in the WCAG, but it does support other criteria. So there is, when we make efficient use of white space, there are benefits in readability. So it makes easier to read and scan text and content on an interface. It also improves cognitive clarity because it will reduce the overwhelm and confusion of your user. You're going to have less elements on the page. And also it supports navigation, so improves focus and flow of your interface. And then when it comes down to touch accessibility, it also makes it easier to interact with control. So if thinking when you're using your phone, for example, and there is a button, click here to subscribe. If it is a really small button and there are too many elements around it, it's going to be really difficult to tap in the right place. And of course, if you are adding a button to your report, we should also consider these, the way it should not be smaller than 40 by 40 pixels. Just make sure that it's not more than that, so it's easier to interact. Think about that as well. Next, we have a criteria on WCAG on meaningful sequence. And according to them, we should arrange visuals and content in a logical reading order. We also should avoid placing key visuals in a way that disrupts natural reading flow. And then that means that if we make effective use of visual hierarchy, we will help our users to scan the reports more efficiently, especially if we consider the scanning pattern. So when we have a data hierarchy structure like on a dashboard, the Z scanning pattern is the most commonly used, and it's not intentional. We just happen to do that. So in Western countries, we read the logical reading order is from the top left. So it starts on the left to the right, and then from the top to the bottom. And that's why if you consider a Z scanning pattern, everything that falls on that path, it will stand out straight away because we scan the page on that order. So you can see when you have your page entry, we should make sure that we have a title and where we place our main KPIs. And in our page exit, I don't know, I don't like to do much. I sometimes add my button to move to the next page. Now, although that this line on the bottom here, it is on the path of the Z scanning patterns, I would not recommend you adding, for example, your slices underneath. And once it happened to me, I saw a report and I completely missed these slices because they were placed on the bottom of the page. And that's because we expect to interact with those slices before you move on to the end of the page, right? So they should be on the top or left-hand side. So making use of natural scanning patterns and placing most important elements on the path will help our users to scan reports more efficiently and will make your reports also more accessible. And you're going to enhance the experience for everybody. So instead of having something very chaotic without much breathing room, we can design something that it's got less elements, it's got a better hierarchy, and it is everything in a logical order. So this was done also using the same data as the previous one. Next, we have poor color contrast. Now, for me, I like scrolling LinkedIn on data visualization challenges, and it's getting more and more common, this kind of color contrast. So you have a really light background with really light colors to be used on the text or on the data visualizations. And this is terrible, not only for accessibility, but also, for example, one of my screen settings is really bright, right? So it gets even less contrast. So think about those users who maybe the screen setting is not great and they cannot adjust, or the lighting, the environment lighting is not great either. So we have to consider to increase the color contrast ratio. And that means that if you have a light background, everything that or the colors you select for your text, icons, or even your data visualization, they should be darker. And if you have a dark background, those colors on the top have to be lighter. That's the rule of thumb. Now, if you're not entirely sure, how will I know if it's got enough contrast? And that brings us to the next WCAG criteria, which is making content distinguishable. And the wording from WCAG means that we have to make it easier for users to see and hear content, including separating foreground from background. So foreground in our interface is everything that sits on the top of our background. Now, there are some thresholds in terms of color contrast ratio. I have here only AA and AAA. So body text or level AA, which means text, so font size up to 17, or if in bold up to 13 points, the color contrast ratio should be of 4.5 to 1. For large scale text, which is above 18 points, or if in bold above 14, that contrast ratio is slightly smaller, so it's 3 to 1. And there is also a minimal contrast ratio for non-text contrast, so your icons or the colors you choose to build your visualizations. And then the minimal contrast ratio should be of 3 to 1. Now you can see the level AAA has higher thresholds, although it does not specify the non-text contrast. So you should also try to stick to contrast ratio of 3 to 1. Of course, there are some exceptions. So if you have any decorative text or image, or for logotypes, you do not have to comply with these criteria in making content distinguishable. Now, in terms of color, WCAG does not specifically talk about color blindness, because if you comply with the contrast ratios, in theory, you don't have issue with the color combinations you select. But the reason I like talking about color blindness is because in reporting, we love using the colors red, amber, and green to report on performance or progress. And that doesn't go well. It can go down really bad if your users have some form of color blindness. So color blindness is the inability to see the difference between certain colors. And there are approximately 350 million people in the world. And it's more common in men. So 1 in every 12 males have color blindness, and 1 in every 200 females. And unfortunately, the most common type of color blindness is the red-green color blindness. And it makes it difficult for individuals to distinguish between these two colors. And for them, if you have a classic red, so red, amber, and green visualization, it can become confusing or even unusable. Now, if you're not entirely sure how to check if your colors are color blindness friendly, I have a video on YouTube that I show you how to use a free tool, that is the Adobe Accessibility Tools, to check your color contrast ratio and also to run a color blindness simulation. So if you're not entirely sure, that's a really good tool to use. And then that brings to the next, it's still within making content distinguishable. The WCAG states that we should avoid color only meaning, which means we should not rely on color alone to convey meaningful information. So I have here an example, very simple. So we have a table that we have the conditional formatting to use red, amber, and green. I'm sure that most of us must have done something like that, even in Excel. And there is also a line chart that's the only way to distinguish the two series is based on the color. What can we do? If you're talking about conditional formatting, we can always add an icon, right? So in this case, I kept the icon colors. I still have red, amber, and green, but the direction that the arrow is pointing will help your user to understand what you're trying to highlight. Now, understanding the meaning of arrows, it's very straightforward, but if you decide to select icons like circle, square, or whatever, you have to make sure that you explain the meaning of those different icons, because nobody's going to know that what you're trying to say by adding a circle if they cannot see the color of the circle. Now, for line charts, we can also make the use of different line styles. So we can have a dashed line and a solid line, for example. You can make use of different markers for different series. You can also add the series name the label directly on the chart as well. So there are different options. So the most important is trying to add an alternative way to our users to distinguish different metrics or measurements. Now, sometimes the charts do not allow us to add anything else other than color. So for that, we can use the definition of accessible colors, which means there's a combination of colors that together they have enough contrast between themselves for you to distinguish that there are different colors. We may not see the color the way that everybody else does, but we can identify that there are different colors. And then if you go back to the color blinding simulator, that can help you to select the colors that have enough contrast. And also you're going to have to explain what that color means, because even if you see, I don't know, blue and someone doesn't see as a blue, they will know the meaning based on the legend, for example. Next, we have font size. Now, Power BI allows us to use I think the minimum font size is 8 points. And sometimes it comes by default when you're adding labels or even your axis font size. Now, that's not a good idea, although it allows you. If we squint our eyes to read the content, our users will as well. And not to mention if they have vision impairments or if they're trying to visualize information from a smaller screen. So we should always consider increasing the font size. Now, regarding font size, WCAG has a criteria on resized text. And according to their criteria, the text has to be resized up to 200% without loss of content or functionality. Now, Power BI does not support true responsive text scaling, although we can design our interface using a larger size. And I have here an example of font size that you can use, and that will also help you to build your hierarchy, right? So you have your title, headers, and if you note it here, the smaller size I use on the data labels is 12 points. So we should avoid using anything smaller than 12 points. But that is considering if you have your canvas size, the default one that it is 16 by 9. If you increase the canvas size, we have to increase the smaller font size as well proportionally, because everything's going to look smaller on the screen. Now, we're going to now, excuse me, talk about what I'm going to talk about is text alternatives, and it's very difficult to understand unless you kind of rely on text alternatives. So I'm just going to show you a very quick video. And I want you to think, what is the message of this video? What do you think they're talking about? Now, unless you know British Sign Language, you will not be able to say what this is about, right? And if you think about making content perceivable, in this case would be adding, for example, captions, right? Or someone speaking over, so those who cannot perhaps see and hear the content. Now, we come to the next WCAG criteria, which is text alternatives. And according to the criteria, if you have an image, including icons, if they convey important information, they must have alternative text that describes its purpose. And if you have complex images, including data visualizations, we have to give a more detailed alternative text so that your user will be able to know what's the main message out of that. So there are different ways to add alternative text. So in Power BI, all the native visuals will have a box for alternative text. And you can type in on this box the message that you want for that chart. So I intentionally use this complex matrix, which is like a heat map style. And then there is a big perhaps if you type in the message. It is the easiest way because you don't have to create DAGs. But first, it's got a limit. You cannot use more than 250 characters. And also, if the information is going to be refreshed periodically and you expect those values to change, you will have to come back every time the data is refreshed and manually change it. And that brings us to the other way we can add alternative text. So we can make use of the conditional formatting. We can create a DAX to convey that message. It will dynamically change if you have slice selection or if the data is refreshing. So the way that I create these alternative text, I kind of knew the message that I wanted to give because it's got historical data in that. I just reused the measures that I created for the dashboard, and I asked Copilot to create for me the text string. So I just explained the measures I had, and then Copilot returned the text string, which is this one here that I used. So every time that there are new months added to the series, the new data, or if you use a slicer to filter the data, it will be dynamic. And there is no limitation in numbers of characters. So that is also positive side. You don't have to just write a small message. You can actually add some depth to make sure that everybody understands. Now, I think alternative text is the hardest element to implement, because you have to consider that whatever we write in the alternative text box, that's the only thing that our user may understand about that visual, right? And I think it has to be super tailored to who is consuming that information through a screen reader. So I would highly recommend having a conversation, understand what type of insights that matter most for them, so we can tailor the alternative text to suit their needs. Next, let's have a look in how we can make content operable. So think about WCAG states keyboard accessibility, where all interactive elements should be usable via keyboard navigation. And that means they should not have any keyboard traps. So you should be able to get in and out of interactive elements without getting stuck. And Power BI is compatible with keyboard navigation by default. But we have to be very, very careful with, there is something that we have to confirm from our end to make sure that the keyboard navigation runs smoothly, which is the tab order. So if you have a perfect report, oh, I've done everything right, but if your user navigates your report like this, that is not going to be, it's going to, all your efforts into making your content accessible, you're going to be partially lost. So what do we have to do? We have to match the order that our users are intended to consume the report. So first you will expect to see the title, and then I put there the slicer. And there you can see that I'm following the reading order from left to right, from top to bottom. And we have to manually check under the tab order. So if you go to the selection pane, there is layer order, which is not what we're talking about. Layer order is how the elements stack over each other. We're talking about tab order. And we have to manually adjust that by selecting the element and moving the arrows up and down. Now, if you're not sure how to do it, I also have a short video showing you how to adjust your tab order and how to rename each element, because you can also rename to make it easier to set up the tab order. Next WCAG criteria is bypass blocks. And that means that the user should be able to skip repetitive content and go directly to the main part of a page or a component. Now, Power BI has something called focus mode. By default, you don't have to configure at least all the native visuals. So if you hover over, there is this option here, focus mode. And by selecting it, that visual will take the entire page. So the users will be able to isolate that single visual temporarily and bypass or everything else that is around it. Now, although we don't have to configure, it's quite important to allow your users know that the feature is available for them. Next criteria is on headings and labels. So if you look to this chart, it will be quite difficult to understand what it is about, because there is no label, there is no type, there is nothing. We don't know what it is. So that's why we have to make sure that we add titles and labels so everybody can understand what is the information you try to show. And then let's see how we can make content understandable. So let's start with the definition of readability. And you may have noted that you may know this language. So this is Afrikaans. And I did that intentionally because of the real definition. The definition I'm going to put here in English, which is readability refers to how easily and clearly written content can be understood by its intended audience. And intended audience is very important. So why would you create a for example, a title like this, that's FY23 Q3 CAPEX. So all of that may sound like a different language for someone else. So we should try to always use plain language and avoid jargon. So write it in a simple way. Now let's talk about predictable behavior. So here in the UK, sometimes the supermarkets like to rearrange the shelves and everything where it goes. And it's very frustrating. So you go there, oh, I want to buy milk, and you get that. You can't find milk because, they put fruit there, right? If it's a small supermarket, oh, you just go around. But if it's a huge supermarket, you're going to spend some time trying to find what you want because your mental math, it's not there. They change. And that is why predictable behavior is also very important when we are designing digital interfaces. We have to maintain a consistent layout and interaction patterns across pages. And we should also avoid unexpected changes when interacting with visuals. So if you're expecting a slicer to filter everything and on the other page it doesn't, it is changing how you interact with it. So you have to put a warning about it. So when we're talking about predictable behavior, it doesn't matter where you choose to put your page navigation or your slices, you have to stick to it across the report and ideally all the reports within your organization. So predictable behavior is key in making it easier to navigate and effectively use your report. Next criteria, WCAG is input assistance. So it should provide clear instructions in Power BI that can be done for slices, for example, or we can add an information box explaining, I don't know, if you have specific metrics and you want to explain how it was calculated. So using tooltip is great because you don't have to add all those text box. It's just a hover over effect. Although we have to be careful because tooltips, they don't work very well with screen readers. So make sure that whatever you write on your hover over effect, there is also the option on the button of alternative text, and you write the same information to make sure that everybody access that. Finally, let's look how we can make content robust. Now, Power BI is compatible with screen readers by default. So here are a list of some of the common screen readers and the level of compatibility with Power BI. I like using Narrator, which is the Windows built-in if you have Windows 11. And I use that to test my alternative text. And now, although we don't have to configure because it's part of Power BI, there are a few things we can do to make sure that the screen readers will work effectively. So, for example, we have to ensure the interactive elements as a clear name, role, and state. And then if you think about slices, we often have multiple selection in slices. And when you multiple select, you can appear something like this. So you have here multiple selections. You don't entirely know what's multiple select. So don't even think about screen readers only. Think about overall user experience. So what can we do? So in this example here, I have created a DAX to add the selection here as a subtitle. So there is an option to add conditional formatting on subtitle, which means that whenever the selection is going to change, my subtitle will change it again. And I also added here as well, that's another option. I just added a random box, again, using DAX. So doesn't matter how you do it, just make sure there is a way to identify what is selected in a multiple selection slicer. If you're working with tables and matrices, we also have ensured that the column headers are descripted and not too abbreviated with jargon. So instead of super abbreviating or writing TLC, so three-letter acronyms, make sure that it is easy to identify where you think rev, what is rev, revolutions, revenue, you don't know. Make sure you write the whole word. If it's too big and it doesn't fit there, you can add a little hover over explaining what that means, for example. That's the input assistance. And then if you're working with tables, we also have to look into the format pane under accessibility and select the row name. So the row name helps the screen readers to identify the purpose of each row that you have in your table. So it's like a relationship between the data and a clear data label. And you should avoid adding code. So if you have, I have my IDs, don't use it. Use something that's meaningful. And for slices, we often remove the headers. We expect the users to know that they have to click in different options to filter the visual or the page. Now, that can be that's not great for a screen reader, but also if you have a user who doesn't know how to use Power BI, they are scared to click and break. So add a header, tell what to do, right? Select top products. So wrapping up the session, when we improve report design, if you make your reports more accessible, you will naturally create more professional and usable reports. Understanding the significance of accessibility ensures that all users can effectively interact with Power BI reports. And of course, familiarity with WCAG is very important to ensure compliance and also to guide us. I don't know what it means making accessible. So there are criteria and thresholds that we can follow. And by applying all these techniques, we are creating inclusive reports, which will also lead to better engagement and understanding. So I'm going to show a very, very short video, which is I want you to take that message with you next time you have to create any interface. And this is what it's like to live in a world that wasn't designed for you, or it was created without considering how you see and perceive the world. Oops. Moving. So more content on accessibility in Power BI. So the video for tab order and color contrast ratio are here. There is a really good session that Valerie Junk delivered on the built-in accessibility features in Power BI. So that's the recording. If you want a Power BI accessibility checklist, if you go to my website, there is the option to download. And then if there is any questions, I don't know if this service is still available, but yeah, thanks to all the sponsors. I'm happy to connect if you want to reach out. So I don't know if you have time for questions. No?
As of now, no questions, Juliana. Thank you so much. It's an eye-opening session. Thank you so much for sharing these views on these compliances and so on.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Have a nice one. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you everyone for being a part of Data Analytic Group. Connect with us. Stay updated with us.
And I would just like to share the how to climb the certification. Let me share my screen very quick. Let me know once it is visible to you, my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to claim the certification, I already posted a link in the chat from GPPP people. Let me post it one more time. So if you're already aware of this, just try to click on this link, select it, and enter your details. Your working email ID is mandatory, and choose the location. So today, as a part of Global Power Platform Bootcamp 2026 WCAG edition, so just try to select the edition which you attended, WCAG, and submit it. Maybe within next month. That means almost completed, right? First week or second week, you are going to receive a certificate from GBPP 2026. Those people, you can post it on your LinkedIn handles and share your views. And also we shared one more link in the chat. Sashi, can you please repost it one more time? Which you are going to receive a certificate from Data Analytic Group, which is a part of this Microsoft Fabric user group. So we are also going to release a certification as well. So post it one more time, Sashi, the link in the chat.
Yes, sir. Posted, sir.
Posted. Good. So select that link. It will redirect to this forms. Enter your details, your Gmail account. So we have automated the process. Whoever is still available and attended, we will take it noted. And enter your details, whether what kind of an occupation is employee or student, whatever. Enter your LinkedIn handle so that you will receive a certification from our end as a part of a data analytic group combined with a collaborated with GPPB. So you can post it both, or maybe individually also, you can post it on the LinkedIn handles. And before closing the session, I would like to thank to my co-organizers, Lanka Kaudani as well as Shashi, who is helping me. And even the volunteer session, like from a few people are there, like Charita Reddy and Meghana, these people. So I would like to thank both of them. And that's it. I'm good. And if you have any queries for us, please raise your hand so that we will take our queries. If there is any feedback or something, if you want to get it shared, let us know. And next month also, we are going to have a good events. So if you want to follow us, we already shared the WhatsApp groups there. Please join there, and also Meetup. Meetup handle is there. So next month, we are going to have a very good connect, like 1 hour bite. We will share those details soon. Any questions for us? Hope you like it.
Yeah,
And thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank you
day.
so much for
Great weekend.
joining. Yes, thank you so
Thanks
much.
for joining.
And thank you for